The moment my sister told everyone I wasn't wife material, something inside me snapped. I smiled, held the microphone, and revealed a secret she thought would stay buried forever. What happened next left the entire room frozen. The morning of my wedding smelt like hairspray, white roses, and the faintest trace of panic I refused to name. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in the bridal suite of the old stone inn outside Charlottesville, the Blue Ridge Mountains soft and purple beyond the windows, watching the woman in the ivory lace gown who was somehow me. 33 years old, finally sure of something, finally loved exactly as I was. Mark was waiting somewhere downstairs, probably tugging at his collar the way he did when he was nervous, excited, the same tug he gave the night he proposed on the dock at Claytor Lake with my grandmother's ring and a bottle of cheap champagne we never opened because we were too busy kissing. I should have been floating. Instead, my stomach was knotted tight because I knew Sarah was coming for me today. She had been coming for me for months. Sarah is 2 years older, 2 inches taller, and has spent her entire life convinced the world owes her the better portion. Growing up in our split level in Richmond, she got the bigger bedroom because she needed space for her activities, the new cheer uniform when mine was still perfectly fine, the car on her 16th birthday while I took the bus until I could buy my own at 19. Mom always said Sarah was sensitive, which apparently translated to Sarah gets whatever Sarah wants, and Emily needs to understand. By the time we were adults, the pattern was calcified. Sarah married Tom right out of college, safe, steady Tom who sold insurance and coached Little League, and immediately set about building the Instagram perfect life. Monogrammed everything, Bible verses and calligraphy over the kitchen sink, 2 perfect blonde children who said yes ma'am and no ma'am like tiny politicians. I, meanwhile, moved to DC, climbed the ladder at a marketing firm until I was vice president, dated men who bored me or terrified me, or both, and refused to apologize for liking my independence. Sarah translated that as selfish. She said it to my face at every Christmas, every Easter, every time Mom forced us into the same room. "You'll never keep a man, Em," she'd say, sipping her Chardonnay, lips stained the color of judgment. "Men want a wife, not a boss." I laughed it off for years. Then I met Mark. Mark saw me present a campaign at a healthcare conference in Atlanta and waited outside the ballroom afterward just to tell me my deck was brilliant. He's a trauma surgeon, calm in chaos, the kind of man who can sew someone's face back on and still remember to pick up milk on the way home. When he looked at me, he never saw what was missing. He saw what was there. 6 months in, he told me he loved that I scared the hell out of most men. A year after that, he asked me to marry him. I said yes before he finished the question. Sarah's reaction was immediate and venomous. First came the concerned phone calls to Mom. "She's rushing. She's always rushed everything. Remember how she broke up with Connor the week before his deployment? Poor boy was devastated. Connor cheated with a stripper in Fayetteville. I simply refused to wait." Then came the text to me disguised as sisterly worry. "You sure he knows what he's getting into? You work 60-hour weeks. Who's going to cook dinner, Em? Who's going to make a home?" I ignored her. Then she went to Mark. He told me about it the night he came home white-faced from a quick beer with my future brother-in-law. Sarah had cornered him in our kitchen the previous weekend while I was in Richmond doing cake tastings with Mom. She cried, actually cried, telling Mark I was emotionally unavailable, that I would never put him first, that I wasn't wife material. She brought up every failed relationship I'd ever had, twisting the knife with half-truths and outright lies. Mark listened, thanked her politely, and came home to me. He didn't even raise his voice when he repeated it. He just held me while I shook with rage. That was when I knew I might have to burn it all down, because I had something on Sarah, something atomic. Last Thanksgiving, I had watched my perfect sister fuck a man who was not her husband in the backseat of his pickup truck behind mom and dad's house. The day had started normal enough. Dad deep frying the turkey in the driveway like he'd been doing since we were kids, the Macy's parade on in the background, mom's cornbread dressing perfuming the whole main level. Sarah and Tom arrived late, the kids wired from McDonald's on the road. Sarah already on her second bottle of Pinot by the time we sat down to eat. Tom spent the meal on his phone answering emails. Sarah kept refilling her glass, laughing too sharp, too loud. After pie, Tom took the kids upstairs for naps. Sarah announced she needed air. All this family togetherness was giving her a headache. She slipped out the back door in her coat half buttoned, boots unlaced. I noticed because she'd been weird all day, jumping when Tom touched her arm, avoiding mom's eyes. Something cold settled in my gut. I waited 3 minutes, then followed. The floodlights were off, but the moon was bright enough. I saw the red truck parked at the far edge of the property where the grass met the tree line. Sarah was already inside it. The windows were fogged. The truck was rocking. I stood frozen for maybe 5 seconds. Then I took out my phone, hit record, and walked closer. The audio was garbage, wind and distant grunting, but the video was crystal. Sarah's blonde hair spilling over the back seat, skirt rucked up to her waist, some man I didn't recognize pounding into her like tomorrow was canceled. I got 37 seconds before bile rose in my throat and I backed away. I watched the footage once that night in my childhood bedroom, hands shaking, then locked it in a password-protected folder and tried to forget it existed. I almost managed, until Sarah decided my happiness was a personal offense. After she ambushed Mark, I moved the video to a thumb drive and put it in my jewelry box, just in case. The months between engagement and wedding were a slow bleed. Sarah weaponized every bridal event. At the engagement party, she pulled me aside in mom's hydrangea garden and hissed, "You think you can just waltz into marriage after living like a man all these years? Mark deserves better." At the bridal shower, she told the seamstress, loud enough for everyone to hear, that I should consider a looser fit because stress eating runs in the family when we're unhappy. Mom begged me to keep the peace. "She's jealous, honey. She and Tom are struggling. Money's tight. He works all the time. Just rise above it." I tried. God, I tried. But Sarah kept escalating. 2 weeks before the wedding, she mailed a letter, actual paper, actual stamp, to Mark's parents. In it, she listed all the reasons I would make a terrible wife, complete with bullet points and a Bible verse about submissive women. Mark's mother called me crying, asking if it was true I'd had an abortion in college, which I hadn't, and whether I planned to keep working after children. Yes, thank you. That was when I stopped trying. I called my best friend Lauren, who is a litigation paralegal and terrifyingly competent. "You still have the video?" she asked. "Yep." "Password protected?" "Triple layer." And I backed it up to the cloud under a dummy account named Tax Documents 2019. Lauren laughed so hard she snorted. "The wedding is in 12 days. You bringing the big guns?" "Only if she forces my hand." She forced it. The wedding day was perfect, until the reception. The ceremony itself was flawless. Late October lights slanting gold through the stained glass of the old chapel, Mark's voice cracking when he said his vows, and my dad tearing up when he gave me away. Sarah sat in the second pew in a navy dress that cost more than my veil, smiling like a shark. At the reception, the string quartet played, the barn glowed with 1,000 fairy lights, the bourbon flowed. Mark and I had our first dance to At Last, and I thought maybe, just maybe, we'd made it through. Then came the toast. Dad went first, sweet and bumbling, telling the story of teaching me to ride a bike and how proud he was I'd found someone who loved all my sharp edges. Lauren roasted me gently about my inability to keep a houseplant alive, but promised Mark I was worth it. Mark's best man, Jake, his brother, got everyone laughing with tales of medical school debauchery. Then Sarah stood up. She had a microphone. Of course she did. She'd asked the DJ for it 5 minutes earlier. I seen her. She tapped the mic like she was about to accept an Oscar. The room quieted. "I need to say something," she began, voice trembling theatrically. "As Emily's big sister, I've always felt protective of her, and today, watching her stand up there, I can't stay silent." My blood turned to ice. Emily is brilliant, she's successful, she's beautiful, but marriage isn't about any of those things. It's about sacrifice. It's about putting your husband first, your children first, your home first. And Emily, she paused, letting tears well perfectly, Emily has never been willing to do that. She's always chosen herself, her career, her freedom. I'm afraid, truly afraid, that Mark is going to wake up one day and realize he married a woman who will never be the wife he deserves. You could hear the collective intake of breath. Mom looked like she'd been slapped. Dad's face went red. Mark's hand found mine under the table and squeezed so hard it hurt. Sarah dabbed her eyes. "I love you, Em, but someone had to say it. You're just not wife material." The silence stretched. I felt every eye in the room on me. Some pitying, some judging, some, God help me, nodding along. I stood up slowly. My legs were steady even if my heart wasn't. I walked to the DJ booth, took the second microphone, and smiled at Sarah. "Thank you, Sarah," I said, voice clear as the bells that had rung an hour earlier. That was illuminating. You're right about one thing. Marriage is about truth. So let's talk truth. I nodded to Lauren, who was already at the AV table. She'd been ready since the salad course. The lights dimmed. The projector screen behind the head table flickered to life. And there it was. The video filled the barn. Moonlight on frost-covered grass. Sarah's unmistakable blonde hair. The rhythmic creak of suspension. Her voice, drunk, desperate, moaning, "God, yes, harder," to a man whose wedding ring glinted when he braced against the window. Gasps rippled through the room like a wave. Someone dropped a glass. It shattered. I let it play for 15 agonizing seconds, long enough for everyone to understand exactly what they were seeing, then signaled Lauren to pause it on a frozen frame of Sarah's face twisted in ecstasy. I turned back to the microphone. Last Thanksgiving, while the rest of us were inside watching football and eating pumpkin pie, Sarah was in the back seat of Brent McAllister's pickup truck. Brent is married, by the way. 3 kids. Lives 4 doors down from Mom and Dad. His wife Katie is here tonight. Hi, Katie. Sorry about this. Katie McAllister stood up so fast her chair fell backward. Her face was white. Tom, Sarah's husband, was staring at the screen like he'd been shot. The kids were upstairs with the nanny, thank God. Sarah's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. I walked toward her, slowly, heels clicking on the hardwood. "You want to talk about wife material, Sarah?" My voice carried without the mic now. The room was that quiet. "Let's talk about it. Let's talk about how you've spent years calling me selfish while you were screwing the neighbor because Tom doesn't excite you anymore. Let's talk about how you cried on my shoulder 2 Christmases ago because you felt trapped, then turned around and weaponized every private thing I ever told you. Let's talk about the fact that you tried to destroy the best thing that's ever happened to me because you can't stand that I'm happy when you're miserable." I stopped a foot from her, close enough to smell her Chanel No. 5 mixed with terror sweat. "I was going to let you keep your secret," I said softly for her ears only at first, then louder. "I was going to rise above, like Mom told me to. But you stood up in front of everyone I love and called me unworthy. So now, they get the truth about both of us." Sarah found her voice. "You bitch, Careful, I interrupted. Glass houses, sis. She lunged for the projector. Lauren intercepted her like a linebacker. Two of Mark's surgeon friends gently took her arms and escorted her, still screaming, out into the cold. Tom followed, face gray, not looking at anyone. The silence after the doors closed was deafening. Then Mark stood up beside me. He took the microphone from my shaking hand. He said, "For the record, my wife, my brilliant, kind, ferocious wife, is the best thing that ever happened to me. And anyone who can't see that can follow Sarah out the door." He kissed me in front of everyone, long and slow, while the room erupted in applause that turned into cheers. Later, when the music started again and people danced like the bomb had cleansed the air instead of poisoned it, Mom found me by the bar. She was crying. "I didn't know, honey, about any of it." "I know, Mom. She's ruined everything." "No," I said, watching Mark laugh with his brothers across the room. "She tried. She failed." Sarah and Tom separated before Christmas. Last I heard, she's living in a one-bedroom in Short Pump, posting cryptic quotes about betrayal on Facebook. Tom got the kids most of the time. Apparently, the judge wasn't impressed with her affair. Brent McAllister's wife took everything but his 401k. And me? I'm 6 months into being Mrs. Mark Reynolds. We bought a house in Alexandria with a porch big enough for morning coffee and evening wine. I still work 60-hour weeks sometimes. Mark still brings home milk without being asked. We argue about whose turn it is to load the dishwasher and make up on the kitchen floor half the time. Some nights, I pull up that video, just to remind myself I did the right thing. Then, I delete it for good, because I don't need it anymore. I'm exactly the wife I want to be. And Sarah finally understands what not wife material really looks like.